Hi, my name is Stephanie Moore, and I'm going to introduce you to Roger Kaufman, who is certainly one of the history makers of the field and who is also one of my advisors and whom I consider to be my mentor. I currently am at the University of Virginia and spent some time with Roger recently down in Tallahassee interviewing him about different aspects of his career. With Roger, of course, he's very well known for needs assessment in the field. But in this interview, I wanted to bring out some things that I've had an opportunity to learn with him that may not necessarily always come out in a book or something like that. So I really wanted to create an opportunity where people could get to know the Roger that I've gotten to know and have a chance to learn some of the things from him that I feel have been invaluable for me and my personal development as well. So you have a background in psychology as well as statistics?
Some words my father said in my first year at Hopkins. He said, son, the world is like a course in calculus. And I said, oh boy, here's something else I'm not going to understand. He was a mathematical physicist. And I said, what's that, Dad, being a good son? And he said, well, the first course that everybody takes is differentiation. The second course that if people take, they don't apply, is integration. Differential calculus and integral calculus. And that stuck with me all these years, is that there's both kinds of calculus in our lives as well. One is the integrative, holistic, and the other is the individual building block kind of stuff. And so all this kind of major was me exploring for something I didn't know about. I was looking for, how does this all go together? Does it all go together? Is there sense in all of this? And it finally came to me, yeah, the sense, at least to me, is in terms of societal value added for all people, not just one group or the other, and getting them to define it instead of imposing it.
I wonder how much your background in psychology really played a part in how you developed MEGA.
The psychology piece really gave me some of the basic ways to think about things in terms of hypotheses and research questions. What questions do you want answers to, and how do you get those? And how do you know those questions are important questions? And that's how I got the needs assessment base at the 3 levels, mega, macro, and micro.
There are a number of articles, including one by you, that I always felt set the stage for how the field moves beyond any one technology. You focused on assessment.
I wrote an article way back when for the then AECT journal. As I recall, it was called From How to What to Why, which tried to make the case of we know how, we're very good at this and getting better, and have some research. Then we were starting off listening to people like Bob Mager and others about measurable objectives. That was the what. The thing we weren't dealing with so much is why do we do this in the first place? And so I was trying to set the stage for at least the way I was thinking about things, and of course, being egotistical, wanted other people to think the same way. There are some people who bought into it, and some other people said, no, I don't want to do that. That's not practical, that's not real world. What we do is we do what people tell us to do. And even if that means rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic and forgetting about any kind of positioning and looking for icebergs, they went ahead and do it. And indeed, we have a lot of people who still feel uncomfortable with linking how to what and to why, and making it an integrated system instead of fragmented.
Folks in the field could begin to draw linkages between what you've developed over time and how that plays out in their very real jobs and lives.
Frequently, what people are quoting me on is needs assessment. And of course, what I did is expanded in the 1979 book I wrote with Fenn English on needs assessment. We started expanding where you do a needs assessment as gaps in results. That's absolutely critical because the focus on results. And if you use need as a verb or in a verb sense, you don't get that gap in results. You get a gap in process. And we expanded that from what I called products, the building block results, which, for instance, most instructional designers will deal with, or media people will deal with, production people will deal with, to outputs, what the organization can or does deliver outside of itself. and then to what now is called MEGA, outcomes, the societal impact and the value added, and try to get that alignment. And so I came to MEGA in that process, and I came to MEGA in another strange way. I don't know whether you're interested or not. Well, anybody out there who has kids probably knows what my son, when he was about 6 or 7, did. We were driving in the car, and Jack kept asking, "Why, Daddy?" And I kept on saying, "Why?" And I got between the third and fourth explanation of why, and I ran out of reasons. And it came up, because I said so. And I knew as soon as I said that, that's not rational. And so that's what started pushing me into more in the direction I said earlier, from how to what to why. And the why had to include adding measurable value for all internal and external partners. And so that's how MEGA, actually my son pushed me into that by his incessant questioning of why, Daddy. So
I think all of that's really tied up together, and you address that pretty directly. You're very specific about us distinguishing between ends and means.
And the conventional wisdom is not to talk about the chain of consequences. And so they tend to want to get to the means. We're going to get the police there. We're going to get the fire there. We're going to have counseling available in the schools. We're going to have credentialed nursing staff. And the answer is yes. And what's the consequences of that in terms of ends, which is health, safety, survival, and well-being. And so that's why I make a big deal over the difference but relationship between ends and means. And that's why I define need as a noun, as a gap in results, so that you don't blur those. Why would you want to pick a solution until you knew that you had gaps in results that should be closed? If you don't have that data, how do you pick a means? How do you know what instruction to design? Or how do you know how to do workplace layout? Or how do you do mediation? I mean, you can do it, but wouldn't it be nice if it closed a useful gap in results? So that distinction, but relationship between ends, results and consequences, and means, resources, and how to do it, is vital and unfortunately very, very often blurred.
I think as you talk about societal impact, most people are prone to think of that in terms of environmental effects. And while that's a part of your model, that's not the totality of it.
So we started asking people from almost around the world, what kind of world do you want for your children and grandchildren? And we want it in terms of results. And usually they'd say, well, you know, I want more money spent on education. And I said, no, let's put that aside for now, because maybe it'll end up with that, maybe it won't. What do you want for your children and grandchildren? And usually, if you ask them about them, their progeny, their future, they can give you very clear answers. If you ask them about themselves, they say, oh, this is practical, real world, I know I'll never get more money for my programmers. But if you ask them about that, so we literally went around the world, almost around the world, and asked people, what kind of world do you want for your children and grandchildren? And when you sorted out the ends and means from that, there was a very, very clear consensus. And I ended up calling it mother's rule. Because you ask a mother what they want for their child. They don't want them murdered, raped, permanent disabilities, infectious diseases from which they die or become permanently disabled. They want them healthy and happy and surviving. And so we came up with some indicators for society, what I call the ideal vision, the kind of world we together want to create for tomorrow's child. And it talks about things including contributors to that environment. But environment, what difference does the environment make if it isn't on the basis of health, safety, well-being, and continuation of life?
Underlying your work is a very strong emphasis on system thinking. So I'd like you to explain what the difference is between systems thinking and system thinking.
I found in working with engineers, each one was optimizing on their subsystem, their piece. And you go to specialists and physicians, and they are experts on the alimentary canal. the kidney, the liver, the muscles. And if they don't understand that all those have to go together for total health and well-being and survival, then you get funny things happening. My late father-in-law, who had an endowed chair of medicine at the University of Virginia Medical School, which is a school you might be familiar with, he had an endowed chair of medicine. And he was an anesthesiologist of some note. And he told us that every once in a while he would follow up on a patient, which is unusual for an anesthesiologist to do that. And he's found them on 5 or 6 medications. You can just see their condition just going down and down and down and down and down. And because they weren't looking at drug interactions, each one was creating their system. And so what he did is he took them off of all medication and they got better. And so that's why the systems is when you look at the pieces and optimize on that. That's like optimizing on 3rd grade learning and not worry about 2nd grade contributions and what they have to do in the 4th grade and beyond. So systems tends to be very popular because it allows you to limit. But understanding there's interaction between the parts while you do that. But the system concept starts and ends with mega, where everything has to add value up a value chain, which goes from inputs and ingredients, processes, how to do it, building block results, products, what you can deliver, outputs, and the impact on external clients and society, which is outcomes. Mega, macro, micro, process, input. That linking.
I think most of the people who are familiar with your work think of it more in terms of applying in corporate strategic planning, but not so much in the fields of instructional design or instructional technology. Why do you think that is?
Now we've seen the field expanding. AECT, ISPI, ASTD. ASTD has now formally said, focus on instruction is dead. And now they're talking about more holistic frames of reference. And sometimes the people just laggard because I don't want to change. I'm liberal, but I don't want to change. And so the field is broadening. I see the field as broadening at a terribly accelerating rate. And there are some people who just don't want to keep up with it. Either they don't have the energy, they don't have the openness, they don't have the integrity. And then let's get back to your work. This is about ethics. In your book, you're saying, look, it's ethics by design. That has to be a core of this, because not just doing, as Peter Drucker said, it's not about doing things right, but it's also first about doing what's right. And what's right to me, and I think other people, is about adding value to all stakeholders inside and outside the organization.
Many of the founding figures in our field really wanted to make a difference. Are we doing that, or have we gotten off track?
Peter Drucker wrote something one time labeled The New Realities. And I picked up on that theme of new realities of our field. And for instance, reality is not divided into courses, programs, teachers, classrooms, media. It isn't divided into policies, programs, politics. It's more holistic than this. And I think if people step back from themselves, like Itzen did by asking if our university is the solution, what's the problem? If people stand off and say, if what I'm doing is the solution, what's the problem? That makes you enlarge, if you're honest, enlarge your context. And I think that maybe the way universities are organized now with programs and departments and divisions and things like that, there's a fragmentation that might be happening. And for you to get hired and then for you to get promoted, you have to do something in that area that's successful to the people who hired you. And so I don't know whether that might be limiting people who want to go horizontal as well as vertical. And so maybe it's the way we organize in companies and colleges and universities and schools. It'd be interesting to pursue to see whether the social structure that's put on there affects how people go about thinking.
A student asked you what your hobbies were, and your response was simply mega. So first of all, is mega your hobby?
I love travel. I love travel. And I love to get into different cultures and see how they do things. And it's always interesting to me to see what they harvest because of their culture. We went to make a presentation in India a year ago, and I thought I'd seen abject poverty in Central and South America, and there was nothing there that could compare with what I saw in India. And then I saw there were 2 levels of abject poverty in India. And when you started asking the questions, you get really strange kinds of answers. And and part of it was a subculture event. One group felt that there's nothing you can do. Your role in life has been dealt to you from birth, and you just go through life hoping. And another culture that says, I can get out of this. And you could just see what they were doing in really bad situations. So I learn a lot from traveling and doing work in other countries. And while I'm there, I try to put some time in for sightseeing and doing stupid things like whitewater rafting and breaking an ankle.
Your relationship with Jan is very special. I don't think anybody could say they legitimately know you without knowing about you and Jan.
We're real partners, and I'm yet very emotional. I'm very blessed. And she's also my most avid critic and supporter. I mean, she doesn't let me get away with anything. And I run things past her, and she says, well, what about this? You missed that. That's a good point. And it's nice to have that kind of partnership.
Is there anything else you would like to address or add?
The world holds so much promise. There's so much we can be doing and contributing if we would get out of our doctrinaire stances and look to see how we individually and then collectively can add to making this a measurably better world. And look at the consequences of not doing that. Are we, if we're not adding value to our shared world, are we subtracting value? And my concern is, I think we have the capability to add value to our shared world. And just hope we can get more people to join the conversation and join the journey.